You can all hear me.
Kindly proceed.
Okay, now I can hear you. I think this presentation is basically about the need for having a regulated society or having a regulated institution in the mold of perhaps like Law Society of Kenya, the engineers, accountants, and so forth. And I think this is coming at the right time when you have had very long deliberations on this very, very important question. So the bill that you have is a step towards regulation, having a self-regulated body or institution that can look into certain affairs. So what exactly does it mean to be a regulated institution? To be a regulated profession, for example, like marketers in Kenya. It means that you have to have a governing or a regulatory body that is sanctioned by law to regulate the profession in several ways, whether in terms of registration, licensing, examination, membership, disciplinary questions, elections, leadership, and so forth. So that is what it means to be a regulated profession, is that you must have some governing institutions, some framework of governance that looks into certain affairs. So I am aware that there is already a bill that I've gone through, the Marketing Society of Kenya's bill that I've gone through, that needs drafting and redrafting to bring it into existence, this whole question of regulation. But I think for you marketers, we need to ask ourselves, why is it so important that we need to have a self-regulated profession, if not government-regulated profession? So there is always need, just like in other profession, your peers, whether they are human resource or procurement officers or lawyers or doctors or engineers, there's always need for regulation of professional practice. I mean, this is something that is like the rule of thumb. There is also need for creation of a statutory agency with relevant bodies to look into certain affairs. There is always need to instill professionalism, integrity, and accountability within the profession. Those are some of the reasons for why self-regulation may be very, very important and crucial at this stage. There is also need to instill standards in the learning, in content, quality assurance, continuous professional development. That's what you as members should be looking at, because you don't want to be a profession that has got no standards, a profession that does not have quality assurance. So regulation will bring that into place. Professional solidarity, like what you're doing now, you're having a conference of members. You need to embrace and express solidarity with some of your colleagues, some of your peers, and it's also good for practice. Of course, it promotes robust professional practice. Regulation is always very, very crucial and key in the protection of consumers. I mean, whether you're talking about standards, quality assurance, because you are a service profession, so you don't want to give services out there to the consumer that is substandard. So consumer protection is actually the very crucial reason why this bill is timely and handy. Of course, by protecting consumers, the larger interest there, the larger objective is always to protect public interests in the services that you professionals provide. And it's also a way of regulating the market, like who gets admitted, who doesn't get admitted, and at what point. It's a sort of regulation, We know professional exams that people do, they limit the numbers and so forth, so that not every other hoi polloi can become a member of the Marketing Society of Kenya. I think that's very, very crucial. We must have a regulated profession, with standards, with membership, with people who are sieved, with people of integrity, quality, and so forth, and competent. That's very, very crucial. That's why we have to have a statutory body that regulates all these practices. Of course, as I've stated, the overarching objective is that all this regulation is always done in the public interest, to protect the public from incompetent or unethical practitioners, and to ensure the effective provision and access to professional services, and not to forward the interests of the professional and its members only. So public interest is very, very crucial in this whole question of governance. But why now? Why now? Why must we seek to have a regulated profession at this point? Why enact a marketing society of Kenya's bill at this point? Of course, this is a professional practice across the globe, so the consolidation of professional regulation and standardization of practice is happening across the globe. In Kenya, it's happening in what we may call your peers. Your peers are like lawyers, human resource professionals, accountants, engineers, architects, procurement officers, body, and so forth. And in fact, most recently, human resource professionals came up with an act of parliament that is into place. They are administering exams. Why not marketers? So therefore, you cannot be left in the cold. It is very, very crucial that you shouldn't be left in the cold when the zeitgeist of regulation is taking hold in all over the world. Whether in Canada or in the US, professions are self-regulating. Of course, in self-regulating, there are certain services that they're going to be conducting, like you're going to define criteria for registration, into the society and certification by the regulatory body. So we will have to define what that regulatory body is. It can be the board, it can be the council. It's, other services to be provided include guidance to members in the form of codes of ethics, rules of professional conduct, and standards of practice. This applies across the board. At the Law Society of Kenya, we have these standards. We have codes of ethics. The other service is that we will maintain a public register which contains information about individuals registered with the professional regulatory body, so that if somebody says that he or she is a certified marketer, what does that mean? Where is the record to be obtained? It's only the statutory body or the secretariat of the society that will have. Of course, disciplinary issues are very, very crucial in running the affairs of any other profession. Professional malpractice always goes to the very root of harming consumers of your services. But in what way can this regulation happen? Like if it happens in the form of a bill or an act of parliament that we are seeking to enact right now, what kind of regulation is that? And across the globe, there are regulated and unregulated professional bodies, by the way. So unregulated professional bodies are the ones who may exist in form of a society or a club or something. But then there are also those ones that are government regulated, where the government has a dominant stakeholding. I think that's not what we want in this case. We want a self-regulated professional body, of course, with one or two government representatives that will be very crucial in giving you the punch, that whenever you need to have, whenever you need government assistance in one way or another. So self-regulated professional associations or bodies is what is most important for you as marketers in Kenya, because it will give you a lot of freedom to conduct your own affairs. It will have a great degree of expertise and technical knowledge of practice and innovative possibilities that probably government regulation may not offer. But I think self-regulation, whether it's self-regulation or it's an unregulated body or in conjunction with government, serves a great deal in serving public interest or safeguarding the interest of the public. Now, I've established that across the globe, regulation may happen at several levels. Like the basic requirements to be a member of our society. At the Law Society of Kenya, you are supposed to meet certain basic thresholds. You must be a lawyer, first of all. You must have gone to Kenya School of Law. You must have been admitted as an advocate. Then you are registered, or you are enrolled, or you are called to the bar. And that's what professional regulation does. Who becomes a member? What are the criteria? Have those criteria been met? Of course, there's certification, regular certification, which gives somebody a stamp of approval for meeting some of these basic minimum. And it gives you title, for example. You may not be called a marketer if you don't have the requisite certification, or you're not a member of the Marketing Society of Kenya. This can be in the act, in the same way that you cannot call yourself an architect if you do not have the required qualifications. Of course, licensing, that's what some of the things that you guys will be doing once you come up with a regulatory body, so that you can have a monopoly of practice, so that not any other person, not any other Dick and Tom and Harry can emerge from the woods and become a marketer or a member of a society. So licensing is very, very important. It's very crucial in safeguarding the market, serving the selfish interest of a professional body can only be served best by professional regulation through a form of parliament. Of course, we can still go further into this and make comparison between a professional body over a professional association. A regulated professional body, that is a body regulated by law or by a statute, by an act of parliament. What are some of the advantages that you guys will derive? So you'll realize that one, professional regulatory bodies, you will more likely be able to impose certain obligations on the members, such as mandatory professional liability insurance requirements. Secondly, you are more likely to issue binding professional guidance, whether they're code of ethics, code of conduct, and to establish standards of practice. That's very, very crucial. Standardization of practice norms and rules is very crucial for every other profession. Professional regulatory bodies maintain public registers that contain information that is in the public interest for the public to know. Like if people want to know who is this, is he really an accountant? People should get to know. Who is this? Is this really a registered marketer? People should get to know. Professional regulatory bodies also have they have certain rules that govern conduct and practice of members, which, of course, if it becomes enacted through legislation, then this becomes enforceable rules of conduct, and that maintains integrity of your profession. Very, very crucial to have a professional body that has got standard, that has got integrity. Professional regulatory bodies will also implement quality assurance programs such as professional inspection regimes and peer review. Peer review in the sense that people can always compare their work, compare and contrast their work, who is doing what. This is what this caucus, such as one you're having, will bring. Of course, complaint mechanisms, procedures, complaints and disciplinary processes, which are subject to stringent procedural rules and lawful standards. And so forth. So, in the bill, I've had a chance to look at the bill. So that was precisely just a background on why and how are professional regulations done. And why is this professional regulation so important if it is to be conducted through a legislative mechanism, such as the one you're seeking to enact. Now, as I have stated, that there could be two types of regulation: unregulated, and then you could be regulated by government, or self-regulation. So self-regulation, I think, is what will serve your interest best in this particular case. And already there are views that have been collected and collated, and I've seen some of the key highlights, some of the focus of attention that members predominantly want. And I summarize them in that way. Of course, an institution that is going to run the society, what are going to be the powers of the president or vis-a-vis those of the chief executive officer or director, as you may call him or her. So these are some of the 9 issues that you're seeing there is what is emerging through benchmarking or comparative analysis of other professional bodies, like what ought to be there. The bill captures them in quite significant ways, if not profound. And I think there's quite a great deal of revision that has to be done just to ensure that some of these things are very clear, and there are certain strands of commonality between what the marketers want and what other professions want. Of course, giving room for peculiarity of what marketers what needs to govern marketers. So I've looked at the bill. I think there's still some work that needs to be done, certain law roles that needs to be clarified. We may not have time to go through them right now. But I think they essentially capture some of the views of members. There need to be an examination board, an examination institutions. What are the entry levels for qualification? What are the powers of director or CEO? Questions of membership. How is membership to be determined? So I think that is very, very crucial. That's very, very important for your purposes. In terms of steering the bill, probably from now up to the time that you guys become a regulated profession, we need to look at some of the things that probably are in the bill that are not properly captured and what need to be reflected. And I think with your engagement, of course, with your input, this may be very, very important. But I think probably I'm speaking from a legal perspective that may be unhelpful at this point in time, because views are always going to be captured or reduced into a legal language. So I thought probably the bill needed to clarify one or two issues, Yeah, so I thought that the objectives of the bill do not quite clearly capture the rationale or some of the advantages discussed above. I think that work that we will have to do going forward, taking into account your views. There's still some confusion of the leadership of the board. Election issues are still not unclarified, like how are the president to be elected. I think that need probably be done. Some small confusion of the council on the board. The examination process is not quite clearly articulated. Questions of licensing, whether renewal or certificates, questions of continuous professional education or development, practicing certificate, and so forth, issues of disciplinary processes. I think that was a first draft that I think we will have to look into, so there's really no cause for alarm, there's really no cause for worry. The legislative process will bring this out will tease out this very, very clearly, very, very categorically. But I think in terms of what the marketers want, the bill ought to go very, very deeply into some of the things that you seek to achieve, some of your objectives that ought to be achieved. I think we will clarify this as time goes by with more stakeholder participation. Now, of course, I may want at this point to clarify the typical or conventional legislative process in Kenya. So a bill such as this may be different from what normally comes from Parliament, because in most cases bills are government-sponsored. Most bills are government-sponsored. There are also private-sponsored bills which are externally generated. So if it's government-sponsored, it's internally generated. If it's externally sponsored, as in this case, it comes from outside Parliament, such as you marketers. The first thing, of course, one needs to look out for when in this particular process that we will be steering from now onwards is to look at the question of whether participation has been done by the various stakeholders. So I think in the drafting of the bill or in looking for justification why the bill should be amended or redrafted, this will be guided more likely by legal language. Now, once you have a bill such as what you have now, we will have to go to Parliament by identifying a member of Parliament to sponsor the bill for us in Parliament, and to take the bill through various legislative processes. So his role will really be to forward the bill that we shall have drafted and discussed, capturing all your objectives, visions, and all that. So the insider MP will introduce the bill in Parliament, and then the bill will go through the normal processes such as the Directorate of Legislation Services and so forth. All this will be consultant guided or guided by a lawyer, like in this case somebody who has drafted the bill. Of course, there are various processes of legislation, as I have highlighted there. Pre-publication, scrutiny by parliamentary officers, publication in the Kenya Gazette to inform the public, and then the speakers look at it and see whether it's a money bill or it's a non-money bill or touches on devolution. And then the bill is introduced in the National Assembly, and then it goes through the relevant committees up to the time that the members of Parliament debate it and give their input and finally pass it. So those are some of the processes that probably will become clear, because I can share with you the slides. But those are some of the issues you need to look out for. That in redrafting this bill, are your views quite clearly captured? Yes, they will be captured if there is great deal more stakeholder participation guided by the legal hand, Of course, so our work will be to prepare an exception report, review the existing bill, advise accordingly, and verify whether your views have been captured, and in what way, and ensure that each and every legal provision advances your best interest of marketers in this country, and some of those advantages and objectives that we have spoken about above there. In consultations with officials, undertake comprehensive legal research, and so forth. So that will precisely be our work, to guide you through the process in transforming this whatever you have, the bill as well as the justification, into an act of Parliament Once it's passed into an act of parliament, it becomes a legislation that now regulates the affairs or conduct of matters of MSK. That is precisely it, and I think that's what I can say for now in brief.